Meanwhile, for sexual assault survivors and their ability to hold their attackers accountable, let's just say it's been complicated for decades in Idaho, dating back to stories we did in the mid-2000s about rape cases not getting prosecuted. Did you know before 2016, law enforcement agencies were not required to track the number of sexual assault kits they collected or report how many went untested? So yes, some of those sexual assault kits just sat there for years while the person responsible walked free. 7 years ago, Idaho lawmakers took notice and took action, beginning with requiring the testing of sexual assault kits in 2016, except in circumstances where the victim requests those kits not be tested. Next year, they passed laws to clarify a survivor's ability to pay and get those sexual assault kits. Then in 2019, House Bill 116 essentially achieved a test-all status for sexual assault kits, except for in very specific cases. So one would think this would mean long strides were being taken in support of sexual assault survivors. A team from Boise State School of Public Service dug into the impacts of these rules and laws, I should say, since 2019. And their new report, expanding on a 2021 study, asked the question if more laws would mean more justice. Joe Paris spoke with researcher Dr. Lisa Growit-Bostaff.
In all of the media attention, not just here in Idaho, but around the country about sexual assault kits, mixed with what people see in popular media, movies and television, the procedural dramas, we started hearing just, in the communities, people saying, okay, now that there's all these sexual assault kits and they have to get tested, we're going to see all these arrests and all these convictions. And we thought, well, actually, that's a research question. We don't really know if that's going to happen or not. We thought we probably should take a look at this and actually find out, is it possible that these statutes could have some effect on the processing of sex crime cases?
Which I know was the hope at the time.
Yes, and we did find a couple of instances in the first report of HB 528, the very first one, having some effects on sex crime processing, but it really isn't until this one that we're able to really demonstrate the various effects, because we needed other years to compare it to rather than just a year before HB 528 and the year after.
So right now it seems like, from the outside, it would say that, okay, we passed all these laws, we have some data now, let's see what these laws are doing. Is that
yes,
simplified what you guys are doing?
Yes,
here?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does the report say?
What we found in the end is that there are some differences that we can see across the various pieces of legislation and before and after all the pieces of legislation, but it's not as dramatic as people would expect. Everybody was talking about how this was going to increase arrests, and arrests are very interesting in this study, because in the year following HB 528, the very first piece of legislation, there's a 650% increase in arrests in the year following that piece of legislation. Now, some people, and then it returns back to normal, just normal levels. And so people might look at that and say, oh my God, what's happened? Why did this not stay at the level it was? Well, we don't really know for sure, but I can venture a very educated guess that a big portion of that increase in arrests that happened after HB 528 had to do with backlogged cases that got tested. They got hits in the system and allowed officers to make an arrest.
What isn't exactly the way that everyone thought it might play out, which is why we research things.
Right. Officers express a lot of support for the test-all statute. 61% of them are supportive or very supportive of the test-all statute. So things have really, I think that there are some really positive things that have happened, but I don't think it's the massive shift that many advocates or other people who work in this realm were looking for.
And the report goes really deep into a variety of impacts and data sets, and I'd really recommend checking out the full report that we will link to on our website. But a few takeaways from researchers that I thought we could share. There was a 67% increase in victim self-reporting after the collection of new laws. Idaho officers also documented that physical resistance during incidents in a larger percentage of cases after House Bill 429 passed, and that 2018 legislation, they've seen the increase over time. Now, the team concludes that the statutes resulted resulted in more evidence documentation in sexual violence cases and increased prosecutorial review, but not a significant change in connecting victims to services or the proportion of cases ending in arrests. And Brian, connecting survivors to resources is something that clearly needs a lot of work. And anecdotally, we've heard that from people in the community. Also, a major thanks from the team at Boise State to the Idaho State Police and Forensics Service Director Matthew Guimette, because they work to provide resources, researchers access to the data in the report. And there's some recommendations in the report as well. And it'll be interesting to see if lawmakers and advocates, what they do with this information. But I did want to go back for a second and talk about the 650% increase and then it stabilizing. Something that I talked about with Dr. Groet Bostaff is that in sexual assault cases, there's a lot of time where the survivor knows the attacker. They're familiar with each other. And it becomes a situation in a courtroom of, was this consent? What was this? In those situations, sexual assault kits are not as impactful. So after that backlog was able to get cleared and they were able to tag people that were out there that were guilty of something, it kind of cleared that log. So again, sexual assault kits are very, very important, clearly, but this research kind of showed the limitations that there are with them.
So overall, kind of a mixed bag when it comes to results, but any progress in this case, in these situations, is good progress.
Right, because you highlighted in the beginning, you know, back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, there's a lot of stories about, well, we just don't have the evidence to try these. Well, these types of laws, they really make differences.
All right, thank you very much, Joe.